Alright everyone, it's time for Occult Literature, video number 268, The Indigenous Drugs of India, 135 pages long, so intermediate length. Link in the description of this video to my edition of this work on Amazon. Second and third links to my books, blogs. This is definitely going under the herbal and medical category. It's essentially a list of all of the different medical materials that were offered in the bazaars of India at the time. Now, keep in mind, India, mid-1800s. Encompasses what's now modern-day Bangladesh, Pakistan, certain other, I believe, Bhutan, if I remember correctly, and I'm not sure whether Nepal was independent at that point, but was quite different. And so it's actually that particular region. It lists botanical species, about 100 of them actually, minerals, certain other preparations, chemical preparations. In a few cases, it actually lists certain things of an animal quality. For instance, the Spanish fly beetle. There are certain types of species in the Indian subcontinent actually that contain similar materials, cantharides, and so that's listed as well. It's quite dense, but this, you got to keep in mind, this is the 1860s. Most of the works of the medical era that I edit certainly come from the late 1800s, or even like the 1900s, 1910s. That's sort of the golden era of having just enough scientific rigor, but also a little bit of like the folklore and everything else. This is from the 1860s. Civil War is just barely over, actually. I think this was like the year that the Civil War ended. Excellent work of British extraction, of course, in being in India. And already showing sort of the categorical systems that are used usually only 20, 30 years later. So it's an exquisitely well done work. It has both the local names and the sort of the Latin and English terminology for all of the species and minerals and so forth. Gives a little bit of folklore here and there, a lot of medical application. In some cases, talks about specific recipes. So this is a hands-on work, a historical work, an anthropological work, technically speaking in the most literal sense. One of my favorite works, actually, that I've ever edited, especially within the herbal category. This is becoming more of a thing for me, especially since we're, undergoing a world pandemic at the moment. I figured it was about time to add to my knowledge of medical lore, maybe of last century, or actually 2 centuries ago, technically now. And I find it fascinating, and this is one of the better ones. It also actually talks about other works, and a few of them I'm trying to obtain, including one that was on like the pharmacopoeial sort of knowledge of the Bengal region. Unfortunately, that one appears to not have been an actual book, but an excerpt from another book, so I can't really release it as I normally do. So I was sad about that, but there are others mentioned, and I will be perusing. Again, link in the description of my edition of this work on Amazon. Highly recommended, especially if you're into the sort of herbal homeopathy sort of thing. Digging out, stuff from the past really does inform a lot of the works that are released even today. You'll find similarities. You'll certainly find overlap. And some of these species, by the way, are introduced. For instance, tobacco. It's funny because it mentions cannabis, datura, some of these the potentially psychoactive species. It also mentions arsenic. It's usually not a good idea to take arsenic medicinally. Second and third links to my books, blogs. Again, I'll be making the blog post for this, after I make my BitChute exclusive today. I'll be focusing on some other literature. I do have another sort of medical and recipe and tip book that I'm editing now. It's a little bit later. It's late 1800s, and it's also more of that sort of young adult literature mindset or domestic mindset. This is more rigorous, more specifically scientific, and also, again, anthropological. There are many other works at those links available under the herbal header as well. That's about all. Peace out.